So, some of us have been raised up in the cult of Christianity or a cult of another religion, or just a cult in general that's not necessarily defined as religious. And I found something interesting that I want to share from a book, and I think we need to be aware of the indoctrination and brainwashing that takes place, just so that we can help ourselves to grow, help ourselves to be free from the bonds that shackle our mind, our being as a whole, and other aspects as well. And to help us be wary of other situations in life that we come across that can be similar, because to just think that, say you grow up Christian, to think that that's the only, to think, oh, I need to get away from that, and not realize that you can get into something that has that same cult mentality is very easy. So being able to first, as they say, recognize that there's a problem. I think one of the first things is recognizing that Christianity is a cult. People may practice it differently, of course, and that's not really the issue at hand. It's not whether a person should or should not be practicing it. That really has nothing to do with this. The point is that how it affects the point I'm trying to make is how this affects your behavior, how it affects your relationships, and taking steps to heal if there has been damage and there has been wounds inflicted, or you're having issues, and a lot of issues you may not even be aware of. So again, this is really not about, to go back to what I said about whether or not somebody should be this or that, or what if they should be Christian or not. That's not really the issue at hand at all. But I just want to read something I found. I'm not even sure of the book that it's from, actually, which is kind of funny. I was back at my parents a few months ago, and I saw this. I think it was a book I just saw sitting there, and I picked it up, and so I had made some copies out of it because it just really stood out to me. Once you get that perspective and you step away from something and look back on it, you realize this was the kind of stuff that I was growing up with all the time, and this was very normal to me, and to me now it's very bizarre in a sense, So this is I'll just start reading, and you'll kind of get the idea. It says, "The young man said nothing else as he stood before the Roman governor, his life hanging in the balance. His accusers pressed him again, hoping to trip him up or force him to recant. But once more he answered with the same short phrase, 'I am Christian.' The early martyrs were crystal clear on what it meant to be Christian, but ask what it means today, and you're likely to get a wide variety of answers, even from those who identify themselves with the label. For some, being Christian is primarily cultural and traditional, a nominal title inherited from previous generation, the net effect of which involves avoiding certain behaviors and occasionally attending church. For others, being a Christian is largely political, a quest to defend moral values in the public square, or perhaps to preserve those values by withdrawing from the public square altogether. Still more define their Christian experience in terms of a past religious experience, a general belief in Jesus, or a desire to be a good person. Yet all of these fall woefully short of what it truly means to be a Christian from a biblical perspective. And it goes on and asks some questions. I guess it's some kind of workbook. What do people around you think the word Christian means? And what I want to get into is in this next part. It says, in addition to the name Christian, the Bible uses a host of other terms to identify the followers of Jesus. Scripture describes us as children of God, as citizens of heaven and lights to the world. We are heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ, members of his body, sheep in his flock, ambassadors in his service, and friends around his table. We are called to compete like athletes, to fight like soldiers, to abide like branches on a vine, and even desire his word as newborn babies long for milk. All of these descriptions, each in its own unique way, help us understand what it means to be a Christian. Yet, the Bible uses one metaphor more frequently than any of these. It is a word picture you might not expect, but it is absolutely critical for understanding what it means to follow Jesus. It is the image of a slave. So, again, it goes into some more questions like, what are some characteristics you normally associate with the term slave? And early believers knew that following Christ was synonymous with being a slave. Why is the concept of slavery offensive to some believers today? And even in the goes on here, this one says, in the Bible the word slave is almost invisible, yet it permeates the pages of Scripture, masquerading as servant. For many people the term slave is offensive, and understandably so. Yet the Bible clearly teaches that we were purchased by God, we are his possession. What are the implications of that truth for our daily lives? True Christianity is not about adding Jesus to my life. Instead, it is about devoting myself completely to him, submitting wholly to his will, and seeking to please him above all else. It demands dying to self and following the Master no matter the cost. In other words, to be a Christian is to be Christ's slave. So, really, what I'm getting at here is that, everyone has their own experience being religious, being involved in some kind of group, being, and how they're raised and everything, and no two experiences are alike. What I'm just talking about is my own experience, and I know people that have had similar ones, and we're really talking about something serious here. We're talking about a mentality that you're bred into, that you're born into, of complete and total submission, surrendering your mind, your body, your will, your entire being to this, Christ or God or whatever. And the way I was personally raised was, or that I was taught, because, of course, everyone has their own interpretation of the Bible, just as anyone may have their own interpretation of different so-called holy books or doctrines that may not be religious at all. But for me, the way I was raised was that even my thoughts themselves were under scrutiny from God. He knew all my thoughts, and thinking certain things, which was the majority of things I was probably thinking, were sin, were deemed sinful, and that, combined with other sins, of course, led to eternal damnation in hell. So when it goes to the extent that even your very own thoughts are something that you essentially have to alter to the point that you won't even you will try to not allow yourself to have certain thoughts. That's a very, very, very dangerous place, in my opinion. And what I want to say is that when it comes to this idea of slavery, it really affects the relationships we have with people as we go throughout life, because even if you have, as I have, gotten away in a sense from Christianity, I pretty much just walked away and said, and didn't believe in it, and all those things, I just left what I was raised in. A lot of course, those things stay with you, just like if you experience abuse in your life, you may walk away from the situation as you should, but does that mean that there's not sort of residual effects that go with you and things that you still have to deal with? Absolutely. So in this case, with the Christianity or cults in relation to slavery, we take those things and, as I said, take them into many aspects of our lives, in particular relationships, because slavery would be the relationship of a master to a slave. And so therefore, how do we interact with people in our lives? We may have totally, again, stepped away from Christianity or whatever, but when you have a relationship with a friend, lover, people who you work with, authority figures, parents, people who are older than you, how are you interacting with them? Is it mimicking this master-slave sort of scenario? One word you can use to describe that is archetype, and that is taking this as that model and then applying it. So every time you enter into, say, a new relationship, you begin to form it in such a way that it is a master-slave relationship. Or you may even be the one who is the master. It could be that way as well, which isn't really much better necessarily, So when that's your model and that's what you see as master-slave, that being the model, oftentimes we think, oh, that's the only model. So that's very dangerous as well. But really, we're needing to look at that and really be aware of that, because honestly it's sometimes hard to see that, and I think that was very difficult. It's still a struggle I have, to recognize that. Again, a lot of times we're not aware of these things. A lot of times we're totally unconscious, and we're having issues in relationships, we're having problems with people, and wondering, why do I feel this way after I have an interaction with someone? And we may be completely clueless. So I hope this can help someone who can relate to my experience, because I know that there are, I know I'm definitely not the only one, of course. So when I think, as I said, we have this archetype we build from the relationships, and how can we break that archetype, or how can we relearn and form new ways of viewing and building relationships with other people? Because again, is it really any better to be the master and the other person the slave? You might flip it and do it the other way around, but how about overcoming that, and how about breaking that, really those chains of slavery? So I hope that gives some perspective, and I hope that it's helpful, and I would just encourage you to try to be strong, in yourself, because you can get really beat down in these things. You can really feel that, you're not worthy of something, or you're have to, get approval from others. Or a really big thing for me, a really huge struggle for me has been the idea of punishment, the idea of, when I do something, say I for instance, in what I do for a living, if I'm interacting with someone I'm working with, and I make a mistake, or if it's in a personal relationship or a friend and I make a mistake, my reaction to how I feel about myself, or my reaction to how big the mistake is, say I just I forget, to do something for someone, I come down really hard on myself oftentimes, and I feel like that person is thinking really horribly of me, and that there's this impending punishment, there's just really severe punishment, and it's totally disproportionate to the situation, so it causes a lot of anxiety and stress, because I am still, all these years, however, maybe 15, no, probably almost 20 years or so, if not more, later, still carrying these archetypes with me. And it's not even sometimes that I've become aware of these things till recently, of this idea that, well, why do I feel so stressed out when there's a situation? Why do I feel like every time I go to check my email, or I get a voicemail on my phone, I literally have this fear that seizes me up, and I feel that it's, it's all over kind of thing. Like, this is it. Like, I've done something horrible. Like, I have this anticipation that everything's gonna be horrible, and really is that it's just crazy. But even if it were to turn out horrible, even if there was some raving lunatic on the other end of the line, would I really need to be that upset about it? Would I really need to say, oh, well, I did something, or beat myself up for it, or become really angry with that person when it's not going to really accomplish anything? So these are just some things that I hope are helpful, and again, I just encourage you to try to be aware of this if you're not already. I'm still learning myself, and hopefully this can help you as well. Alright, thank you for watching, and have a good day.